This is the Solid Signal podcast for the week of April 6th, 2020. Still at home, friends, just like all of you. And I hope that everyone out there is staying completely safe and at home as much as possible, avoiding as much contact as possible. When we work together, we can get through anything. And this is no exception. My friends, I'm not here to talk about that. I'm going to guess that you have plenty of sources for news and information about what's really going on in the world, and you tuned into this podcast for a different reason. No, I'm here to talk about that other thing that's been basically uniting all Americans in the last 2 weeks, and that's Tiger King. Oh, you knew I had to talk about Tiger King because everybody's talking about Tiger King and everybody has their own opinions about it, and I want to come at it from a kind of a different point of view. My friends, a long, long time ago, I was fortunate enough to take a class about documentary filmmaking from a brilliant professor by the name of Jeremy Murray Brown. It's my understanding he's actually still out there teaching. But Dr. Murray Brown had his own perspective on documentary filmmaking, having made documentaries himself. And let's be honest, I took that class close to 40 years ago, and so I'm not necessarily going to remember every little bit about it. But here's what I did get. Here's what kind of shone through and what I still remember from that class from many, 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 many years ago. It's that a documentary has two critical components. A documentary has to present a largely truthful account of what is going on. It has to ring true, or in the words of Stephen Colbert, have truthiness. And also, it has to expose the viewer to a point of view. It has to be some sort of advocate. Now, that may not make sense to some people, because they may think that, okay, well, that means every documentary has bias. Every documentary absolutely has bias, but it is benign bias. So let's look at that again, kind of two different ways, or, those two things in a different way. A documentary doesn't necessarily need to be 100% factually accurate as long as it is representational. If you're watching a nature documentary where you see a bug carrying a leaf across a branch, it's okay if it's two different bugs as long as it's a behavior that both bugs would commonly do, and that if you did happen to look at that bug for a long enough period of time, that it could actually have happened that way. And also, from the point of view bit, every documentary should have a point of view. The point of view is that of the filmmaker. And often it is, as I said, completely benign. For example, in a nature documentary, the point of view is that nature is a good thing and you should learn more about it. Now, a point of view without the ability to ring true is just propaganda. And that's something that is completely different from documentary, and it's scary when propaganda films take a documentary style because then people can be misled. Unfortunately, this happens all too often. And also the bit about things ringing true, if what you're doing is creating something in the documentary style, but it doesn't really ring true, then what you have is basically reality television. We call it reality television, even though we know it has nothing to do with reality. It's a very contrived situation in which producers try to create the desired outcomes based on some goals that they set ahead of time. This is the opposite of a documentary, but I think all of us know what reality television looks like, and all of us know that it isn't real. Anyway, I spent a long time trying to lay the groundwork, and so let's get kind of deep into how that does and what that means with regard to Tiger King. Netflix calls Tiger King a documentary, and even articles about the show call it a documentary. But I think if you look at those two criteria, it is not a documentary, and it fails in the more surprising way. It does actually show a relatively, what I believe to be truthful telling of what's going on in the exotic animal industry. Now, of course, I have no idea whether or not it's truthful, but it certainly seems as if all of the content is completely unscripted and didn't take place for the benefit of the camera. No, where Tiger King fails, surprisingly, is that it doesn't come through with a firm point of view. What are you supposed to learn from this? And really, nothing. You don't end up learning that, for example, keeping exotic animals is bad, because they don't make that case. They don't even try to show that there are real consequences to keeping exotic animals. I don't want to spoil it if you're halfway through, but you never really see anybody whose life goes horribly awry just because they keep exotic animals. And if you know the end of this show, then you understand what I mean by the word just. No, all this is just an opportunity for people to gawk at people who own exotic animals, for all of us to feel somehow better than those people, and at the same time indulge in the same fantasy of being near these animals, except in a safe way. We get to watch them on television instead of handling them. No, the documentary Tiger King doesn't really do a whole lot more for the universe than the people who are holding the tigers in the first place. All it does is it's kind of titillating shock TV. Oh, look at these people who are crazy and nuts and maybe did criminal things or maybe didn't. And, oh, somebody like this and somebody like that. And it's no surprise that this happened and it's no surprise that that happened. But Tiger King shouldn't be called a documentary because it's nothing more than entertainment. It's the entertainment that we seemingly need right now, and that's okay. It's okay to go kind of off and do something that just because we feel good about it and we need to kind of laugh and get our minds off things, especially right now. There's nothing wrong with that at all, and I completely support that. But I don't support calling it a documentary, and that's where I think, we all have to learn that in many ways that words matter. And calling Tiger King a documentary does disservice to real documentaries, and you can name any of them that are your favorite. Many of them have a political slant because it's sometimes hard not to. Many of them just expose unfairness in the world in one way or the other, and many of them, such as, for example, I'll call Planet Earth one of my favorite documentaries of all time, merely expose people to something really wonderful about the planet and make the point that our planet is really a wonderful place. Now, I think that Tiger King is more what you would just call Trainwreck television, which is a category that you can say was pioneered by cops. By the way, a little bit of a sidebar. A lot of Tiger King takes place in South Florida, and the original Cops took place in South Florida, so I don't know what that exactly tells you. But the idea that all you have to do is point a camera at people who are a little bit less than stable, and that they're going to do something entertaining, and that you can enjoy that from the safety of your own home because you don't actually have to interact with those people. No, Trainwreck TV there's nothing wrong with it as long as you know what it is, and that's why Netflix should just call it Trainwreck TV. They have no problem labeling things in very weird and extremely specific ways, but for some reason they chose to call Tiger King a documentary. That's where it went all wrong. Meanwhile, I hope you enjoyed Tiger King. I actually did. I got a lot of enjoyment out of it, and I ended up thinking, oh, well, hey, yeah, I knew this person, or I didn't know that person, at least a person who was like those people. And so I think it took my mind off of things for a little while, and I did get a kick out of it. And I'm getting a kick out of the kind of the shared nature of it, that everybody's enjoying it at the same time and everybody's talking it at the same time. I guess I have some sympathy for any individual who may have been maligned unfairly in this show. I'm not going to say whether they were or weren't, and I feel bad for anybody who didn't realize what they were getting into or how they were going to look on camera. But all in all, the show was fun, and there's nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong with just saying it's a little bit of a distraction. Just don't call it a documentary. I've reached out to Dr. Jeremy Murray Brown of Boston University for comment on this, and I find it extremely unlikely that he will answer. And even if he does, he may think with dismay about the few things that I remember about his class back in the 1980s. But if he does, I will let you know. That's about it for the Solid Signal podcast for this week. You all have a great week. Stay safe. Stay inside.